Hey everybody, it's Party Elite with another episode of Total Breakdown from the finals of the Minions of Fortune tournament. This is the final battle in the series as both generals are tied with 2 victories apiece. They clash for the last time on the battlefield today to determine the victor. Make sure you watch the previous battles to catch the back and forth. Follow the link in the description below or use the eye at the top right corner of this screen. As a reminder, make sure you check out Clan Community and sign up for their latest tournament in which you can actually win Total War Warhammer 2. A link for that will be in the description below as well as the comments. It's a long format tournament, so time zones don't really matter either. Another reminder that in this tournament, players lock in their factions for the duration, and they're forced to adapt to each opponent with composition during a set. Once more, the Orc Warboss leads his horde to battle in the air with Foeseeker, Stand Your Ground, Wah, a potion of Foolhardiness, and a potion of Toughness. The Night Goblin Shaman brings Sneaky Stealin', Itchy Nuisance, Gorkle Fixit, and a Scroll of Power, while the Goblin Big Boss rides in on Wolfback. The army consists of 2 units of Goblins, 2 units of Savage Orcs, to 8 Peak Loonies, and 3 units of Savage Orc Biggins. Once again, we dive in with Anti-Large, Frenzy, and Poison with little armor piercing. No armor, but lots of physical resistance and an unbreakable unit. These guys are supported by 2 units of Goblin Archers and the Rusty Errors, providing plenty of range support, while the Goblin Wolf Riders continue to perform scouting and flanking duties. The 3 units of Forest Goblin Spider Riders and 2 units of Orc Boar Boy Biggins are back on the battlefield as well, hoping to work together to shut down enemy cavalry before focusing on ranged and melee infantry. The Empire is led by a General of the Empire flying in with Bloodroar, Foeseeker, and a Potion of Toughness, while the Light Wizard comes in with Faw's Protection, the Net of a Mintock, and Arcane Conduit. 3 units of Spearmen, the Tattersouls, and 4 units of Great Swords provide similar benefits and deficits as the armies in prior engagements, with the Zinthler's Reichsguard and Royal Altdorf Griffites hoping to cause plenty of damage between infantry and cavalry. Finally, the 2 units of Outriders with grenade launchers will look to shut down and frighten the Greenskin infantry off the field as quickly as possible. Alright, as always, we're going to start with a conversation about deployment. Both sides keeping it relatively simple here, but let's start with the Greenskins, of course. We do have up front these 2 units of Goblins able to absorb any initial charges, bog down enemy units, so they're able to hold them in place and get some support afterwards from the line right behind them. And that line consists of the Savage Orcs, the Savage Orc Biggins, and on this side over here, the Savage Orcs and 2 units of Savage Orc Biggins. They're more so the center there alongside the 8 Peak Loonies, so a little unbreakable in the middle there, a lot of frenzy, a lot of sort of poison damage, able to take care of any infantry engagement. Right behind them, we do have this line of the Goblin Archers, as well as the Rusty Errors in the middle there. Often I do suggest keeping these guys a little bit further apart so that if any cavalry or flyers come in, they're not completely bogged down by just one single unit. Even further to that, we do have the Forest Goblin Spider Riders on either flank here, supporting the Orc Boar Boy Biggins, who are just off to the side on either side. Again, these guys work really well together, and the Forest Goblin Spider Riders, who are on this side currently mingling with some of these Savage Orcs, the Forest Goblin Spider Riders do a great job applying poison damage to the front lines as well, so they are able to get involved in melee with infantry engagements as well to provide that extra support. And you'll see here the Orc Warboss, of course, up in the air right back here. We do have the Night Goblin Shaman as well, all the way at the back, able to provide magical support, while the Goblin Big Boss is mingling with the troops here, obviously wanting to dive into melee as soon as possible. We do also have these Goblin Wolf Riders here, pushing forward, able to, again, pick out any early aggression if there's any artillery on the field, able to shut that down, trying to get into position to shut down range support, so just keeping them up here, taking advantage of the Vanguard deployment, rather. And now let's take a look at the Empire. Relatively simple deployment here as well. As it's pushing off to the side, you can see the Great Swords form the center of the front line over here with the Spearmen on either side, obviously able to intercept any incoming cavalry, any large units that might be posing any threat. We do also have right behind them the Outriders, both units able to provide that range support as the enemy infantry does charge in, and after they charge in, able to continue opening fire at rear units if there are any archers in the back or anything like that, while the General of the Empire obviously flying nearby, able to provide that morale support and able to dive in to get some rear charges and side charges as well. We do also have the Tattersouls and this unit of Spearmen back here, providing some protection for the Outriders with their grenade launchers, making sure that if anything comes in from the rears, the Spearmen are there as well as the Tattersouls to bog them down, hold them in place, and prevent any unwanted engagements from taking place. Light Wizard as well, being protected by those units, of course, trying to keep the Light Wizard safe. And we do have the Royal Altdorf Griffites and the Zinthler's Reichsguard all the way at the back, able once again to push in, push out, provide some support against any incoming large units, incoming cavalry, or alternatively push forward and get some side and rear charges in as well. Now you'll notice right off the bat, both of these armies sort of adjusting, pushing their entire army off to the side here. It's almost as if the 2 generals had a conversation and agreed not to engage in the woods here. Very curious as to the decision there. Obviously neither army wants to suffer the debuffs that come from fighting in the trees with cavalry, but very large infantry contingents on both sides of the field, so not sure why they seemingly have agreed to push off to the side here and engage somewhere here instead. With all that said, you'll see a little bit of rearrangement happening with the Empire. The Greenskins, not so much. They're kept in relatively a similar formation as discussed earlier, while the Empire is pushing their spearmen around a little bit. The Tattersouls as well, pulling forward here to join the front line, while 2 units of spearmen are going to cover the rear lines instead, probably having noticed that unit of Goblin Wolf Riders being a little bit more cautious about what might come in from behind. And you'll see a unit of spearmen, I think, joins the front line on this left flank as seen from the Empire's perspective. With all that said, we're just going to skip ahead a little bit as these guys show a little bit of aggression, but they decide to stay back, not being too adventurous. The Empire is allowed to get into full formation before any real aggression takes place almost. So that's interesting. It's almost as if they were communicating and being overly friendly. A very, very friendly battle to the death here. Now you'll see both armies rushing towards each other, trying to get those initial charges and trying to cause a lot of damage. The Greenskins pulling back, hoping that the infantry charges will eat a lot of damage with the range fire if they're just staying put, which is exactly what they're trying to do here. Meanwhile, you'll see the Goblin Wolf Riders as well pulling back as opposed to pushing forward. Not really sure what the thinking was there, but you will see with the Goblin Archers and the Rusty Arrows opening fire at the single unit of Greatswords. Take a look at the sheer amount of damage that unit of Greatswords will take. Obviously, Armor Sundering, reducing their armor to 65. Meanwhile, this unit of Greatswords also takes some shots from the Goblin Archers. I would have strongly suggested actually focusing down on the one unit with the Armor Sundering, as well as 2 Goblin Archers firing into one unit. A lot of damage could have been done. So let's take a look at the amount of damage just going right through there, causing a lot of pain here. Meanwhile, you'll see over here these goblins push forward to try and bog down these great swords, and meanwhile over here as well the Savage Orc Biggins give chase right afterwards, trying to get that engagement off, and over here as well the Savage Orcs need to get a countercharge into the Tattersouls just ever so late on that, so not getting the full benefit. And over here, great use of the Net of a Mintok, making sure that the Orc Warboy Biggins aren't able to actually push forward and get any support in. So great use of the Net of a Mintok. The Forest Goblin Spider Riders are here now as well. They don't have as quick a path to get involved and provide some flanking support to the Savage Orcs, so instead having to pull around the long way. Great cast there. Meanwhile, you'll see the Zintler's Reichsguard pushing in now, trying to get some hurt into the Orc Warboy Biggins. Their charge bonus is quite significant. It'll do a decent amount of damage, and of course the Royal Altdorf Griffites as well coming in to try and shut down this unit of Orc Warboy Biggins as quickly as possible. Meanwhile, over here in the center, you'll see the Outriders with their grenade launchers causing a decent amount of damage in the center here, trying to shut down the 8 Peak Loonies as well as this unit of Savage Orc Biggins and the Goblins. Some of that damage is almost certainly hitting Empire-friendly units as well. You'll see these great swords have taken a decent beating with the 8 Peak Loonies, as well as some of that grenade fire coming in, and the Orc Warboss now chasing after the General of the Empire, who's diving in to try and provide some support to the center here, try and scare off some of these Goblins and the Savage Orc Biggins. The Goblins terrified almost right away, pulling away, and meanwhile you'll see still back here the Royal Altdorf Griffites trying to close that gap as the Zintler's Reichsguard do a decent amount of work to the Orc Warboy Biggins. You'll see the Forest Goblin Spider Riders opting not to engage. Obviously they can't. The Net of a Mintok would keep them sort of far away, so they wouldn't be able to actually provide any support. Meanwhile, over here you'll see the Orc Warboss does drop Stand Your Ground and Wah, trying to help melee defense, leadership, as well as melee attack while chasing after the General of the Empire. We also have Foe Seeker trying to close that gap, while Gorkle Fixit goes down on the General of the Empire, trying to keep him in place as these Savage Orc Biggins do a decent amount of damage, and of course the Orc Warboss as well dives in to cause some serious pain. Off in the distance here you'll see the grenade launchers continue to fire in and get a decent amount of work done on the Greenskins, but all the way over here a little bit of mismanagement. You'll see the 2 units of Spearmen and that 1 unit of Greatswords bogged down by the Savage Orc Biggins. I've said this countless times, all it takes is a quick bit of micromanagement to make sure that the engagement is a bit more of a surround and there's more damage being done per second. It's extremely important to do that, especially in such a tight scenario as this one. Meanwhile, you'll see these Orc Warboy Biggins completely taken care of almost. The Demigryph Knights here, the Royal Altdorf Griffites, engaged for a little while and now pulling back to try and protect the General of the Empire from this very precarious situation. You'll see the General of the Empire, obviously with Gorkle Fixit, trying to counter that with Foe Seeker that nulls the speed debuff, and the Royal Altdorf Griffites diving in there, also under the influence of Gorkle Fixit now, trying to hold the Orc Warboss back so that the General of the Empire is able to get the hell out of there. Meanwhile, over here you'll see the Forest Goblin Spider Riders closing this gap now that the Savage Orcs have given up. They're terrified away, so both of these Forest Goblin Spider Riders diving into the Tattersouls, trying to get that poison damage in, and also just to hold them in place and get rid of them before they're able to penetrate and get rear charges or side charges into any of these Goblin Archers, for example. Meanwhile, over here, you'll see a great little bit of management here. The Goblin Wolf Riders being sent around. They could be sent in to get a rear charge into this set of units here, try to cause a decent amount of damage, or they could be sent, of course, after these Outriders to shut down that grenade fire. And you'll see the grenade fire is doing a lot of work. I am willing to say quite a bit of that work is being done to the greatswords themselves as well, but still causing a fair amount of damage to these Savage Orc Biggins as well as the Goblins. Meanwhile, you'll see over here, the Goblin Big Boss, as well as the Orc War Boss, trying to cause a decent amount of hurt to the General of the Empire, and doing so quite successfully. Frost Protection does go down, but so does Itchy Nuisance, so the melee defense and armor has been buffed, but melee attack and weapon damage have been reduced. A lot of trading going on there, magically speaking, but that damage still managing to push through, because remember, there is always a minimum of 10% of attacks that will land, so still a very dangerous situation for the General of the Empire, despite Frost Protection. Meanwhile, back here, you'll see one unit of Spearmen was pulled back to try and give chase to this unit of Goblin Wolf Riders, as these guys decide to circumvent this situation and chase after the Outriders with grenade launchers, or potentially the Greatswords over here, just pushing back into this general area. Unfortunately, the Outriders there deciding they'll dive into some melee to hold back these Goblin Wolf Riders and trying to keep them in place so that these Spearmen can close the gap. Great use there. Sometimes it's important to use your ranged units in a way that will bog down the enemy so that your anti-large units can come in place instead. Meanwhile, over here you'll see the Rusty Arrows opening shots into the General of the Empire, getting a lot of damage through. Armor and melee defense be damned. Melee defense especially doesn't matter if you're being shot at by some bows. Over here as well, Zinthor's Reichsguard trying to push in again, trying to free the General of the Empire from this very dangerous situation, and it's quite difficult to do so because he is bogged down by these Forest Goblin Spider Riders causing poison damage, the Goblin Big Boss causing a tremendous amount of damage, and now you'll see made to rout as the Orc War Boss back there, Potion of Foolhardiness, Potion of Toughness, trying to get back to full health and getting the hell out of there. Also a dangerous situation, but of course with both those potions, able to replenish full hit points and get to some safety, and able to chase the General of the Empire, who is currently routing. Meanwhile, you'll see over here, the Royal Altar of Griffites push through and engage these Goblin Archers. Not a bad call, but it's a very dangerous spot to be in because of course we do have these Forest Goblin Spider Riders right there, as well as these Orc Boar Boy Biggins. Meanwhile, back here you'll see the Goblin Wolf Riders between the two Outriders with grenade launchers engaging, as well as these Spearmen. These guys are made to rout. They are not able to stick around and fight, so they are currently on their way out. Orc War Boss as well now, chasing after the General of the Empire, who has popped the Potion of Toughness, but if the Orc War Boss is able to close the gap and get the General of the Empire to rout once more, that Potion of Toughness will be completely useless, and that's why the Potion of Foolhardiness is also essential, just to make sure that you have full use of your Potion of Toughness. Down here, meanwhile, the Rusty Arrows free to open fire now at Zintler's Reichsguard, again, trying to get a lot of damage in. The Goblin Big Boss is managing to hold his own there, and of course the armor reduction on Zintler's Reichsguard is helping as well, and over here as well, the Orc Boar Boy Biggins able to dive in and provide some support against the Royal Altar of Griffites, or, of course, Zintler's Reichsguard. These Orc Boar Boy Biggins decide to come in and do just that, while these Orc Boar Boy Biggins are able to help against the Royal Altar of Griffites. And you'll see here the General of the Empire still under the influence of Potion of Toughness, being chased by the Orc War Boss, and now the Net of a Mintok does go down here, tempting the General of the Empire to dive in and get engaged, trying to protect the Royal Altar of Griffites and Zintler's Reichsguard. They are high-value units, but really this is a very dangerous spot for the General of the Empire to dive into. Need to keep your leadership safe, because otherwise, well, leadership will drop as a stat. Meanwhile, over here, you'll see the Savage Orcs engaging these Spearmen. Very easy to dispatch these Spearmen with some Savage Orcs, and over here as well, this flank has sort of switched positions as these guys with some fancy footwork kind of surround each other differently, but still, these Goblins could have been brought in to get a rear charge in there, or these Savage Orc Biggins here could have been brought in to get a nice side charge in there and really take care of that Empire right flank as seen from the Greenskin perspective. Now you'll see the Orc War Boss decides not to follow the General of the Empire into this engagement. Not the worst call there, though honestly the Orc War Boss would have been pretty safe and would be able to shut down the General of the Empire there, along with the Goblin Big Boss, and you'll see the General of the Empire does dive in, allowing these two cavalry units to pull back into some safety. The Rusty Arrows, though, able to open fire, get a decent amount of damage, and you'll see a lot of work being done there. The Orc Boar Boy Biggins as well now, getting some hurt in. We have the Goblin Big Boss, unfortunately, staying back there, looking pretty, needs to shut that gap down. Gork'll Fix It goes down. Foeseeker to counter that speed debuff, but really that's not going to be enough, because all this ranged fire is still pouring in, still trickling in, causing a lot of hurt, and ultimately there you'll have it again, wavering now, very close to routing. And meanwhile, over here, you'll see these Savage Orcs taking a hefty hit from all those grenades there, exploding into little pieces as these Spearmen continue to poke and prod away. But over here, the General of the Empire does dive in, try to cause some terror over here on this right flank, have these Great Swords win this side instead, and you'll see it does work. These Savage Orc Biggins do fall to terror, but unfortunately, the General of the Empire on his way out still taking a lot of damage. Very close to shattering there, and now you'll have it routing, and you'll see at this point, the Greenskins really have the upper hand. They have more units on the field. They've been causing a lot of damage. The General of the Empire has no chance in surviving. The Light Wizard being shut down as well. The Orc War Boss and the Goblin Big Boss both still willing to fight, and mass shatters and a Pyrrhic victory for the Greenskins. The Empire was once again baited into a difficult engagement, losing the General of the Empire relatively quickly in terms of health and routing. Obviously, the General of the Empire never died, but a routing general is a useless general. Some unfortunate clumping on the right flank, as seen from the Greenskin perspective, certainly did not help, and too much time was spent chasing the Goblin Wolf Riders off the field. The Outriders and their grenade launchers were underutilized for a large portion of the battle, and enemy range support was left free to do as it pleased for most of the battle as well. The Empire was swiftly taken care of on the battlefield today, and the Greenskins won a victory that I would hardly call Pyrrhic. It was pretty decisive, and it gave Diplomatt the crown as the victor of the Minions of Fortune tournament. As always, make sure you subscribe to this channel for more Total War content and keep sending in those battle replays. I think it's one of the best ways to learn, and I absolutely love highlighting such intense battles from the community. Thank you guys very much for watching, and I'll see you on the battlefield.